Hello and welcome back. Last video was a bit short. I was having some audio problems. Going to see if it ends up being fixed today. In any event, let's continue. Okay, just making sure. All right. Oh wow, he's really injured there. Okay, let me... Rest hold it. It's dark outside. Okay, so if I remember correctly, yep, went around here. I think I said after I... Right. Should be interesting. Okay, so as said, hinted 2 videos ago in the description, there are 2 ways into accessing the prison. Through the front door and through the estate. I'm going to show how to go through the estate first, and then I think I'm going to exit and head through the front door, mainly because I've never done that before in my playthroughs of this. And I'm kind of curious what it's about. Okay. This will happen. What? There's a light inside, so... What else? Blue fire. Interesting. That's probably locked.
It's done.
To the place of entry. Cool. Tanglebrook's journal. Oh, apparently she and her cousin, the Gaylor, played chess. Oh no.
Step behind me. Follow, my friend. Okay, dokie.
Alright, they cast Stinking Cloud, so I might get stunned. Yeah, he's gonna get stunned. Okay. Oh, I'm dazed as well. Okay. Flamed magic weapon. One handling this trap for me. Tom.
It's done.
Celestial Excel. Let's see what? The Curative.
Okay, dokie. It's done. Step behind me. Follow, my friend. Okay, dokie.
Okay. Giant chessboards. Oh, if no one knows what happened.
It's done. It's done.
What time?
It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. Okay, dokie. It's done.
Whoa. Her one got sucked out. She appears to have been off. Let's As the plot thickens, the road.
Welcome. Do you have news of the...
There's a reason to keep going to these gems. It's for the cultural deal.
Welcome. Do you have news of the missing water Davian creatures? Or is there something else you need? Farewell, mate.
I'll be back in a moment. All right, and welcome back. I guess today, or not today, but right now can be our catechism break, so to speak, since, I want to try and talk about more Catholic stuff in between the gaming. And since we last left off with the discovery of the corpse of the head prison gaoler's cousin, this is a very awkward segue, but I want to talk about sins against the sixth commandment according to the teaching of the Catholic Church as defined and with various examples from sacred scripture, sacred tradition, and current canon law. So it's going to be overlapping, combining all three. Most of the scriptural examples will be taken from the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, so free to look it up on your own time. preferably a translation that just translates what the text is and doesn't try and beat around the bush, so to speak. In any event, an awkward one, but it's an awkward talk. But, since our culture is obsessed with sex, might as well figure out, well, what can I do and what can't I do? And these are specific examples. Obviously, the main rule is that sexual intercourse is between a husband and a wife. And among the many things and people you are forbidden from engaging in intercourse with, that includes those that you have a direct biological connection to. And I'll mention that again later on. So for any creeps thinking they're going to use this list to try and find the exception, shame on you. Okay, in any event, let's get talking. So the first, I'm going to mainly divide this. There's going to be, again, overlap between three different main sections: familial relations, non-familial relations, including a side note on ritual purity that isn't necessarily sinful, but it is something that's going to need to be mentioned, and then a brief conclusion where I list various sins against the sixth commandment and the sixth commandment. But what I mean by that is, thou shalt not commit adultery. So, first, familial relations. More specifically, this would be the sin of incest, which was properly viewed in Judaism and later on in Christianity, and also in natural law and in most of our society as a subset of adultery. Yeah. And I had to put the cutoff at some point, obviously, again, keeping in mind the direct biological relation. I'm going to, for the sake of brevity, I'm going to cut off at the great grandparent, both maternal and paternal, and then the great grandchildren. That's where I'm going to cut it off, just to give an example of how much detail sacred scripture, the human author, this case being Moses, put into it. So, according to current canon law, relations between your paternal and maternal great grandparents, and presumably your step great grandparents, well, not presumably, we can infer that it includes them as well. Sexual relations with these relatives are forbidden. Your paternal and maternal grandparents, and likewise your step grandparents, forbidden. Maternal great aunts and uncles, which naturally includes great aunts and great uncles by marriage, forbidden. Most obviously, your biological mother, forbidden. Your stepfather and your stepmother, forbidden. Your father-in-law and mother-in-law, including the step-parents of your spouse, if your husband or wife happens to be in a family where they have step-parents. Again, sexual intercourse forbidden. Both your paternal and maternal aunts and uncles, which again naturally include aunts and uncles by marriage, forbidden. Your biological brother and your biological sister, commonly referred to as the uterine sibling, forbidden. Your half brother and half sister, that is, it would be the child of your step parent and your biological parent, forbidden. Your stepbrother and stepsister, the child of your step parent without having direct descent from your biological parent, likewise forbidden. Your brother-in-law and sister-in-law, both your spouse's siblings and your siblings' spouses, again, forbidden. And on the note, there was the practice of what is referred to as Levirate marriage in the Law of Moses. And the Law of Moses permitted a man to marry his brother's widow. And in this context, I believe Moses meant your biological brother due to the centrality of the family clan in the ancient world. Have to do more research on how extended this permissivity was. But again, marriage is permitted, provided two conditions. First, if the brother in question died childless, that is, he and your sister-in-law did not sire any children, and if both you and your brother's widow are willing to go through with the marriage. Again, marriage, one of the things for it to be valid is the consent of free will on both spouses. Any event, moving on. Obviously, kind of shocked I have to say this, but we have to bring awareness that such crimes exist. Both the children you and your spouse sired and any stepchildren that you have either taken into your own home or happen to be, depending on what happened with the previous marriage, intercourse forbidden. Your nephews and your nieces, both your siblings' children and the children of your brother-in-law and sister-in-law, and again, those overlap, forbidden. Your son-in-law and daughter-in-law, and we can infer that this forbiddance must include the spouses of your stepchildren. Again, no. And bringing it back around, your grandchildren and step-grandchildren, no. According to current canon law, this will extend to your grandnephews and grandnieces as well. Again, no. According to current canon law, it is forbidden to have intercourse with your great-grandchildren, and with the way the family is viewed, this would presumably extend to your step-great-grandchildren. And there is one family member you might have noticed that hasn't been mentioned yet, and there's often the question of, what about cousin marriage and other relatives? Have to do more research on this because this is a pretty big topic, but in a nutshell, this is what I was able to find out. Current canon law absolutely forbids relations and marriage between first cousins. When we get to first cousins once removed and more distant cousin relations, the church might permit it, but I'm not quite sure where the line is drawn. And from what I found, depending on which region of the world you're in, where the line is drawn would vary. I'd have to do more research before I can give a safe answer that doesn't unintentionally cause scandal. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning, to be safe, just follow this simple rule. Do not marry or engage in sexual intercourse with people biologically related to you. Simple rule to follow. Society has been able to follow this for the most part. Let's keep at it. Okay, so the next section, non-familial relations, and some of these sins and forbiddances I'll mention is going to be some overlap with the first section of the familial relations, naturally. So, adultery, and specific examples given, obviously, adultery in a broad sense is having sex outside of marriage, specifically a spouse having sex with somebody who isn't his spouse or her spouse. And we have examples, specific examples listed. Your neighbor's wife, and then presumably your neighbor's husband. Not sure why I kept putting presumably. I think I was writing it just in case people were taking it literally and were assuming that one gender must not be forbidden from doing this. I think I'd infer should be the better word, not word. Ah, in any event. So your neighbor's wife, your neighbor's husband, a female slave betrothed to another man, and a male slave betrothed to another woman. Bestiality is also mentioned in sacred scripture that forbids both a man and a woman, engaging in relations with an animal. Next section of the non-familial relation forbiddance, we might put in fornicate and title it under fornication and or concubinage, depending on the situation. And the example given in this case, one of many, but well, obviously one of many that the author didn't want to mention, is a woman as a rival wife to her sister. And then from that, we can infer this naturally includes a man as a rival husband to his brother. Fornication and or pedophilia, the latter of which depends on the age of the other person that you choose to engage in sinful intercourse with. And I'm going to bring that up because the example sacred scripture gives is a woman's grandchildren, and then presumably a man's grandchildren. And again, as mentioned before, this specifically can overlap with the forbiddance of certain familial relations. Oh, the next two, we're going to get into the hot button topics that people mistranslating scripture or misinterpreting scripture deliberately wish to ignore. Homosexuality. A man sleeps with a man as if with a woman, example given in Leviticus, and from that, we can infer that this must also include a woman sleeping with a woman as if with a man. Next one that is the online world seems to want to ignore, polyamorous relationships with the intent of potential homosexuality. And polyamorous polygamy is more or less the same thing, at least in the same field of sin. And the examples given from sacred scripture are a woman and her daughter. And from this, we can infer that, to complete the relationships, this also must include a husband and his daughter and or son, and a woman and her son. And the second example is given is a wife and her mother. And again, we can infer that this must include a husband and his father, and or a wife and her father. Sorry, I think I made a typo there. Oh, prostitution. Duh. In addition to not engaging in relations with prostitutes, you are also forbidden from turning your children, or just children in general, into prostitutes. Look, Leviticus is very clear on this. Well, really, it was one sentence, but that one sentence was enough to make it clear no. And then the last one on the non-familiar relations, this isn't sinful behavior. This would be more of a issue of ritual purity and potential health hazard, but the potential health hazard of it just being gross, and then the practice of ritual purity in the Jewish faith. A woman during her menstrual period, no, that's forbidden. And finally, for the conclusion, and I subtitled it, this section, A List of Sins Against the Sixth Commandment According to Canon Law as Defined by the Magesterium, interpreting both sacred scripture and tradition. This will be the lightning round of sins against this commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery, that we need to be aware of and avoid doing. First one, obviously, adultery, bestiality, cohabitation, or as the Catechism at the Catholic Church rendered it, the so-called trial marriage, concubinage, and this is essentially what this means is if you are engaging in a sexual relationship with somebody that you either don't intend to marry or for whatever legal or sacramental reason cannot marry. Famous example of this would be the woman that St. Augustine was in a relationship with before his conversion. Moving on to the list of sins, divorce. Again, one that our society doesn't like to think about. Incest, lust, homosexuality. This next one is something that I've seen relationship therapists actually agree with the church on, at least those who are serious about their profession. And this is a warning sign for anybody wishing to date or get married. An inability to commit to long-term relationships. Interesting. And it's mentioned right here in the Catechism. Astute psychology. Right, moving on to the list of sins, masturbation, fornication, free love, pedophilia, polygamy and other polyamorous relationships, pornography, prostitution, rape, and this would be for both whether it's a female rapist or a male rapist, or whether or not the rapist is raping a man or a woman. I'm sorry, no matter which way you spin this to fit your skewed ideology, it's sinful and it's not going to fly with most people depending on how you try and spin it. Just rape, no. And mentioned as very small sentence in one of the Catechism paragraphs, but the refusal to have children in your marriage is considered to be a sin. Now, you might be thinking, oh, why don't I mention abortion, contraception, and all that jazz? I could, but I was focusing specifically on sins against the Sixth Commandment, and interestingly enough, actually, it kind of makes sense why the Catechism would do this. The Catechism actually posits those as sins against the Fifth Commandment since they involve human life directly. And with this uncomfortable lesson aside, let us continue with the gaming. I will see you after I do this pause, and we shall see if I can complete the video on showing you 2 ways to get into the Peninsula prison. So, see you soon. Right, and welcome back. So, yes, I wanted to pick up these books later. Just wanted to clear inventory space. Yes, the mysterious case on she got her brain removed. Ew. Let's continuing the adventures of Bjorn. Now turned into a sci-fi investigation. How was this person killed? say there's never investigation in D&D. I guess technically speaking, this first chapter is essentially a fantasy CDC. Investigation, since I'm trying to find a cure for this plague that's ravaging the city in the game. Alright, alright. Get back down there in a minute. But first, because I think it would be funny to go the front way around. And because I'm curious. They won't expect me arriving from the front. Maybe they would. Who knows? I don't. Oh, just noticed there was a flag there. I like staring at artwork. Generic artwork. Cool. Really? Hehehe. Venus the Fog. Well.
It's done. Okay, dokie.
Roughly.
It's done. Okay, dokie.
Surprised they don't know I'm here.
Okay, dokie.
It's coined in forms.
Okay, dokie. It's done.
Let's go. Let's go power attack on this guy. How's Dwarf and fighting working for you?
Okay, dokie. It's done.
Short.
Okay, dokie.
As well. So they call. Start forward.
It's done.
Another 4 inches.
Back to wherever.
I don't know if you'll remember from Tomi's background when we met him, but apparently he escaped from this place when they were let them loose. It must be interesting what they're thinking of him now killing him. He died. How did I miss a dead guy?
Okay, dokie. It's done. It's done. Back to wherever. Back to wherever. Die! I'll carve you out. Okay, dokie. It's done. Well met.
Okay. Huh. That's good.
Okay, dokie. Oh, it's done.
Wow. What's the stories?
Okay, dokie. Oh, it's done. Step behind me. Follow, my friend. Okay, dokie.
All right. But I think it'll be over here that we'll call it endpoints. And next time we shall continue with the prison reordering. Right. See you then.